Hello, my name is Adam, and while I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, these opinions and ideas are my own. I encourage you to seek truth by study and also by faith. It takes effort, temporal work, and also spiritual work, faith. So today's video is going to be a continuation, part number 9, on women, temporal power. And this is going to be on the word and virginity and virgin and the etymology. So etymology means like the origin of the word. And I think this is very important because it helps explain the doctrine. And actually, I believe it unfolds some of the mysteries of Mary and Eve and Adam and Jesus and the whole plan of salvation, actually. So I've talked a little bit about this in my prior videos, but I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on some things I was pondering on and learned today. So a friend of mine shared with me this whole idea that virgin isn't necessarily not being married or not having sexual relations, but also is associated with one who's morally pure. And you can go to the Gospel Library app and click on Study Helps and then Guide to the Scriptures and click on the word virgin. And you will see, I'll just go back in my presentation from my prior video just to kind of give a summary. You will see it says a virgin may represent someone who is morally clean, Revelations 14:4. And so anyway, it can also mean that. So then I thought, well, wait a minute, let's try to look up a little bit about the word and where does it come from. So here in this picture, I have this screenshot image taken from the church video on Mary learning of Christ's birth from the angel Gabriel. This is from the video called The Nativity that you can get on the church website or YouTube or any of those outlets. And then on the lower left here, you have Queen Elizabeth I, a rare portrait of a teenage Elizabeth prior to her ascension attributed to William Scrots. It was painted for her father in 1546. So this is Elizabeth I, Queen of England, also known as the Elizabethan era during her reign. And under the article on Wikipedia of Virginity, you will find this image currently, as of today. This is a portrait or a painting called Youth 1893 by French painter William Adolphe Bourgeois. The color white has traditionally been associated with ritual purity, innocence, and virginity in Western cultures. So you have two angels next to the woman. So if you take the idea of women conceiving and bearing the souls of man, that's from D&C 132, and the sacred role that women have and the special part they have in conception and giving birth and producing offspring. And we call it in the scriptures the fruit of the womb. And then you can think about how angels or spirits enter the body of the woman, and then we are born. So you have these angels on either side of her, right next to her. And so I think that's kind of interesting. They're like waiting to be born maybe or something. I'm going to go a little bit about this without going into detail. I want to keep it, clean and wholesome. But under this article of virginity, it says virginity is a social construct that denotes the state of a person who has never engaged in sexual intercourse. It is not an objective term with an operational definition. Social definitions of what constitutes virginity or the lack thereof vary. So here's the interesting part. It says the term virgin encompasses a range of definitions as found in traditional, modern, and ethical concepts. Religious rituals for regaining virginity exist in many cultures. Some men and women who practice celibacy after losing their virginity consider themselves, quote, born-again virgins, which that was interesting. I hadn't heard of that. Continuing on, there are cultural and religious traditions that place special value and significance on this state, predominantly towards unmarried females, associated with notions of personal purity, honor, and worth. Like chastity, the concept of virginity has traditionally involved sexual abstinence. The concept of virginity usually involves moral or religious issues and can have consequences in terms of social status and in interpersonal relationships. Although virginity has social implications and had significant legal implications in some societies in the past, it has no legal consequences in most societies today. The social implications of virginity still remain in many societies and can have varying effects on an individual's social agency. So that's kind of a little bit of the history, sort of like what most of us already know and understand in our Western philosophy and culture. But here's what I found very interesting: the etymology of the word. And I learned some things. So the word virgin comes from Old French, virgine, or maybe I don't know how you say it, virgine, from the root form of Latin virgo, genitive, virginis, meaning literally maiden or virgin. The words virgino, female virgin, or virgulo, literally virgin person, but often used for a male virgin, are hyponyms. The Latin word likely arose by analogy with a suite of lexemes based on virio, meaning to be green, fresh, or flourishing, mostly with botanic reference, in particular virga, meaning strip of wood. So I thought this was very fascinating because what it's telling you is the word virgin just meant pure, or it meant person, or female, or maiden. It just meant, when you say the Virgin Mary, it could just mean the young woman Mary, not just had anything to do with moral purity, but just saying she was a young woman or a young man. And so it could also mean freshness or green. Now, I think about temple symbolism here, about what happened in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve discovered their nakedness and put fig leaves on them, right? Green leaves over their loins. So here you have this Latin word analogy meaning to be green or fresh. Virgo, okay? Interesting. Now, here's what I learned also. The first known use of virgin in English is found in a Middle English manuscript held at Trinity College, Cambridge, of about 1200 AD. De haro martyris and confessors urginis maked fair bode inne to women. And that's the Middle English. And I was like, wait a minute. So you're telling me even the word virgin in English wasn't even used until 1200? Then that means when we hear about the word Virgin Mary in the New Testament as translated into English in the 1600s, was more of a 1600s or 1200s and after concept of virgin. And so it maybe didn't even have to do with sexual purity per se, but maybe it just meant young woman, and they interpreted it in English that way because that was the word they had that represented Mary as a pure vessel, chosen from God, or clean or pure, or chosen, not necessarily having to do with the other concepts that we think of in our modern reference. So that was pretty interesting. And then it kind of made me think, well, what was the English translated from the Bible, the King James Version, and what was the roots of Latin and Greek and so on? And here's some other things that I learned too, which was really interesting. Quote, and this in many later contexts, the reference is specifically Christian, alluding to members of Ordo Virginium, Order of Virgins, which applies to the consecrated virgins known to have existed since the early church from the writings of the church fathers. By about 1300, the word was expanded to also apply to Mary, the mother of Jesus, hence to sexual virginity explicitly. Further expansion of the word to include virtues or naive young women, naive meaning, quote, like a French word naive, which meant young woman. Knave, or maybe it's not the word naive, but young, knave, young women, irrespective of religious connection, occurred over about another century until about 1400. These are 3 of the 18 definitions of virgin from the first edition of the Oxford English Dictionary. Other definitions, however, are similar. So you have this idea that it was between 1200 and 1400 that it became associated with the Virgin Mary. So it may not have even been associated with that until much later. So that was really fascinating. Then it goes on to explain other languages and what that word means in other languages. The German word for virgin is Jungfrau. Jungfrau literally means young woman, but is not used in this sense anymore. Instead, Jungfrau can be used. Jungfrau is the word reserved especially for sexual inexperience. A Frau means woman. It suggests a female referent. Unlike English, German also has a specific word for a male virgin, Jungling, or Youngling. So you have Jungfrau, young woman, and Jungling, virgin male. It is, however, dated and rarely used. Jungfrau with some masculine modifier is more typical, as evidenced in the film The 40-Year-Old Virgin. So that's more modern references. German also distinguishes between young women and girls who are denoted by the word Mädchen. Mädchen. The English cognate maid was often used to imply virginity, especially in poetry, e.g., Maid Marian, the love interest of the legendary outlaw Robin Hood in English folklore. So Maid Marian also meant that, maid or young woman. German is not the only language to have a specific name for male virginity. In French, a male virgin is called puceau. Hope I said that right. The Greek word for virgin is parthenos, which I thought is interesting because I think parthenos has to do with like a hall of gods or a council of gods. It has to do with gods and goddesses. The Greek word for virginia is parthenos. Although typically applied to women, like English, it is also applied to men. This is in Greek. In both cases, specifically denoting abstinence of sexual experience. When used of men, it does not carry a strong association of never married status. However, in reference to women, historically it was sometimes used to refer to an engaged woman, parthenos autou, his virgin, his fiancée, as opposed to gini autou, his woman, his wife, equals his wife. This distinction is necessary due to there being no specific word for wife or husband in Greek. By extension from its primary sense, the idea that a virgin has a sexual blank slate, unchanged by any past intimate connection or experience, can imply that the person is of unadulterated purity. The English sense is not restricted to youth or females. Older women can be virgins, like the Virgin Queen, like I explained in my prior video. Queen Elizabeth I, Queen of England, was known as the Virgin Queen. Men can be virgins, and potential initiates into many fields can be colloquially termed virgins, for example, a skydiving virgin. In later usage, virgin means uninitiated, as in the much older virgin knight. Virgin is also used as an adjective in terms like virgin field. So this was really interesting because, first of all, Greek doesn't have the idea of a wife. It doesn't have this idea. And so they had to talk about a woman, his virgin, fiancé, versus a woman, his wife. So that's really interesting because, well, if the Bible was translated from any of it in Greek, then it didn't really have that word. So you have to kind of take a step back and go, well, what does it really mean then? And then you have this idea that there was a fiancé. So the Virgin Mary was his fiancé. That's all it meant. It meant the fiancé of Joseph, maybe, you know? So we have this modern day idea of what the word virgin means, which it may not have exactly meant what we currently think it means. Or have additional layers of meaning might be another way to say it. So here's a little snippet from the Nativity Bible video that the church put out from Luke 2. And this is Mary, the mother of Jesus, holding Jesus up and smiling as she's looking on the wise men. So another interesting part, I think I'm going to pause and do a part 2 because this is already 13 minutes and I want to keep it shorter. So this is just a little sneak preview of part 2. Thank you for listening.